It's about to go down with Marc and Cathey, a live coaching show about dropping ideas. Marc and Cathey coach and have conversations with brilliant idea creators who are reimagining the world through the expression of their words, thoughts, and action.
It's time, everybody. It's time for It's About to Go Down. I'm Marc Williams.
And I'm Cathey Armillas, and with us, we have the amazing Beach Pace. She is the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters. It's the affiliate in Portland, Oregon. And Beach has this amazing idea, Marc, of creating a public service academy. And so, Beach, we are so excited to hear your idea and kind of talk through it. So tell us about it.
Sure. To be fair to the world, it is not it's not my original idea. I heard about it, just the concept of it. I've been thinking about it for a long time. And the idea is to have an academy, a 4-year college that gets people ready to serve in social change organizations. And more specifically, what I'm talking about there is what people typically refer to as nonprofit organizations or NPOs. I don't like to talk about nonprofit organizations with that title. I like to call them social impact or social change organizations because that's what they do. I like to talk about what we do and not what we don't do. Anyway, the idea is to have a 4-year college, and then upon graduation, those graduates then go on and serve in social change organizations. And they're more ready than I would say the standard social change employee because they've had all this education and background leading up to it. They don't have to start from zero to understand housing insecurity or homelessness or traffic patterns, right? Or food insecurity, right? They already know the history. They already know the background. And so when they enter into the social impact sector, they're more ready. The other piece to this is that I'm a graduate of the United States Military Academy at West Point. That is a military academy, right? So when I graduated, I went and served the United States Army. But when I did so, I had 4 years of preparation. So when I entered the Army, I wasn't green, so to speak. I was ready to serve. And that's the same concept. And so, there's the Naval Academy, the Air Force Academy. There's the Coast Guard Academy. There's West Point, which is Army. Did I say the Naval Academy? Mm-hmm. Anyway, so there's all these academies, the Merchant Marine. And those graduates are ready to serve. And I would love to see a public service academy where people are also ready to serve, but serve their community.
Wow. Well, Beach, first of all, thank you for serving.
Yes.
I appreciate that. And West Point, when I found out that you had went to West Point I remember having this conversation with you, and I knew like you went to West Point when women in an era when women were just allowed to go to West Point, right? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Sure. Yeah, it was, a little bit down the road, but women were first allowed in the academies in 1976. And so the first graduating class was in 1980. And so 7 years later, I was entering as a plebe or a freshman. So it was still pretty new. And I would say, much different when I talked to graduates of the class of 80 and 81 and 82. My experience was very different from theirs. But there was still, and I'm sure maybe there's a little bit now, but there was still, this feeling of we had to let you in, right? You're welcome. Versus come on the team, right? And so, and not with everybody, some people were fantastic, but there was still that sentiment. And then also just the sentiment in high school. I remember going to my guidance counselor and saying, hey, this is where I want to go. And he said, oh, girls don't go there. Just right off the bat. And this is all pre-internet. And I had already written West Point. I had already gotten my little packet of information. And I remember just saying, just here, sign the paper, just say that you counseled me and I'm going to go work on this. And the other piece was, he said, girls don't go there. And I'm like, I'm not a girl. I'm a young woman and I know what I want to do. I want to serve my country, and he was like, oh, whatever. So he signed off and I left and I worked with my history teacher and my junior ROTC instructor and filled out the applications and of course, worked with my parents as well to do the application and all the hoops you have to do to get into the academy. So yeah.
I'm so grateful that you did that. And thanks for sharing the experience. I just thought it was such a great parallel to what you're talking about with the Public Service Academy, because, and you had said this before too, it's like people will sometimes be like, well, why would you want to do that? Or there's this weird space of like, why would you want to intentionally work in that space? And there are many people in this world that want to make a difference. And so why not build a better platform to prepare them for that, right? Is that kind of the crux of the idea?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the time of the original Wall Street movie, the Gordon Geckos of the world. It's make your money on any means possible, get rich, drive the Lamborghini, whatever. And I got made fun of for having idealism and being an idealist. I mean, I want you to think about that. People made fun of me for caring. People made fun of me for serving. And that was the zeitgeist at the time. And I was always just weird and odd anyway. So I didn't really veer me off my path. But, things are changing. People are changing. And there is a lot a singular person can do in this world to create change. And then there's a lot a group of people can do, right? And imagine if those group of people are trained. And then you get into classes at this academy that hopefully will exist someday. And then you graduate and, it's, hey, my name is Beach and I'm here with Cathey and Marc, and we're the class of 1992 from the Public Service Academy. And we all serve here. And we have X number of people in homes now because of it. Right. I mean, imagine those stories, right? Mm-hmm. Instead of I served in Afghanistan, or I was on a battleship in the Pacific. It was, we actually were in New York City working to change homelessness. We were actually in Kansas City, Philadelphia, San Francisco, whatever, creating change there. And it's domestic service, right? It's not in the term of like it usually is, but service in our country to make a difference for our country. So I still see it as national service, but through our communities.
Yeah. Hey, Beach, I have a question.
Yeah.
As we flesh this out, I hear this idea around public service, social change, and I hear a desire from people who want to create that change. I'm curious, what's the problem as a society that we are facing that having an academy for social change would help to solve?
Well, I think there's a couple things here. The first thing is, and hopefully I can keep this straight here. The first thing is the individual thought, right? Is that I want to help create change. And then the next thing is to educate yourself on it. Not only am I the CEO of Big Brothers Big Sisters here in Portland, Oregon, but I also have the honor of serving my community in Hillsboro, Oregon as a city councilor. And then I also serve on the board of the League of Oregon Cities. And the number one thing I see is people believing they already know, right? So for example, get these homeless people out of here, or why is there a homeless encampment here? Whereas interestingly enough, I had a 16-year-old girl just last week reach out. Can you explain more to me about what the city is doing to help the homeless population? So she didn't come in knowing, she came in asking. So that's the first thing, is come in asking versus knowing. Be willing to learn, right?
Sorry, I just got really excited about that. Keep going.
Yeah. Well, imagine walking up to anybody doing their job and saying, why are you doing that? Versus tell me why you do that, right? Think about that. Just tell me why you do that. Teach me so I can ask a more educated question. So the first thing is a person's willingness to want to create change needs to be coupled with a person's willingness to want to learn. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then the second thing is tapping into the will, right? I think even the people who are upset and ask, like, why are there homeless here? Get this encampment out of here. Their ultimate desire is to have a better community, right? And my desire is to have a better community, right? So the desire is the same. We're just approaching it in a different way. right? So how do we have this common ground of, if we all understood the situation and maybe some things that have helped in the past in other cities, could we work together to solve that? Right? So it's a will, it's an individual will to want to learn. And then it's a community will to, frankly, to want to work together, but also to want to spend the money there, right? What we are seeing right now with, in my opinion, all right, what we are seeing right now with the homeless population or housing insecure population, and then you add on mental illness, and then you add on what we're seeing as far as mass shootings, especially this past week. I think this goes all the way back to the 80s and to Reagan, right? He decimated the mental health services that we had in our country, and they've been gone. And once they're gone, it's really hard to build that back up, right? Mm-hmm. And so when you have a government body that says we have, let's just say, this much money, right? And we want to spend it on something, the populace is typically going to say schools, roads, businesses, whatever. They're not going to say, hey, help the mentally ill, right? They're typically not going to say that, right? But could we take this and say, this is for the mentally ill, this is for this, right? Like, could we do that, right? I think there has to be a will to spend money there too. And I believe it's an investment. It's an investment in our community. And here's an example, right? When we have a homeless encampment in our town and we have to have it move, right? So the homeless folks leave, then we have to send in a hazmat team. That hazmat team has to be a hazmat team because there's needles and other things that could really hurt somebody. That hazmat cleanup costs about $3,000. What if that $3,000 was spent on rent? What if that part of that $3,000 was spent on, addiction services, right? Addiction recovery services, right? So, but there has to be a will of the people to want to do that, right? And I think we have to come outside of ourselves and understand it's not just about you, and it's not just about your business or your street. This is about community. We are all so much more connected now, and we have to understand that when we pull that thread on that sweater, so much more comes down than just that thread, right? And what thread are we going to pull? Are we going to pull the thread that helps everybody or helps you feel better as you drive to work? Because in a lot of cases, people are like, I hate seeing that. I'm so sorry you hate seeing that. Imagine what it feels like to be in that encampment.
Yeah.
Right. And so instead of, you can even still say, I hate seeing that, but I hate seeing that. What's going on? How can I help? Versus I hate seeing that, get rid of it. That's a different mindset.
I love that. I love that first thing that you said when you were in the individual space and you were saying, come in asking. That is something that I think is really, really critical. I have a thought about this. Now, remember, Mark and I are always like, we're idea geeks. So we're always like, we're listening to something and we're like, how do you make this idea better? Or how do you pitch it to whoever you're trying to pitch it to? And I had one thought on it that I wanted to explore for a second, because you're kind of talking in two different spaces right now of like, one thought is this idea could be more broad, where the idea is really to get people to think about the fact that they go to work and they care about, the things that they care about, and they want to solve all these problems, but they don't want to have to deal with them. And so it's more like, it's more an altruistic idea where you're trying to get people to understand and see that their communities are their communities. And in order to have better communities, you have to have better services, and you have to have people that really care. And then a spoke of that would be, and this is where the idea could go directly to this idea, which is like, well, you have to create a fertile ground, right? For where you actually put some excitement and you put some energy and focus, and there's a spotlight on doing this type of work. And there's a place that you like, who created colleges before colleges were colleges? Like somebody said, right. There has to be an academic institution where people go to learn how to be adults and have jobs, right?
Right.
So I wonder too, what your thoughts are. Like, is it really the bigger thing, or is it really, because it really saddens me a little bit too, to think that I hate when you hear a good idea and then you realize that an idea doesn't come to fruition sometimes for decades, maybe centuries. And you're like, oh, people have been talking about this for a long time. So what is it that we need to do right now with your idea to really push the initiative forward, I guess, is what I would love to talk about.
Yeah. So I think, I don't have all the answers here, but I think there has to be political will behind it. All the academies are federally funded, right? The military, let me back up. The federal military academies are federally funded, right? So our tax dollars go to pay for those academies, and those academies create leaders of character for our country, right? And those leaders of character for our country serve in whatever branch of the military that they wanted to go into. And then of course they eventually retire, and we get them, maybe 5, 10, 15, 20 years later, right? After they've been through all this experience. So there has to be political will on both sides of the aisle, right? To say, we want to spend money on this. This is worth our time and money to create leaders of character who will go and serve in these social impact organizations, right? And then we get them sooner. We don't have to wait 10, 15, 20 years for them to come into the social change sector. And frankly, not a whole lot of military folks go into the social change sector, right? They go into corporate. So it's streamlining that process, but there has to be an understanding and a political will and desire to do this, to fund it. And a greater understanding of the interconnectedness. One thing I've heard is that there's, one of the parties sees this as a liberal, could see a public service academy as a liberal, incubator where it churns out liberals. And I don't like we're sausages or something, but really what it is it's building a nation of people who care and then know how to put that care into action.
Ooh, say that again.
It's building a nation of people who care and know how to put that care into action, because there's will, but then you have to have ability, right? I really want to run a marathon, but I cannot physically do that right now, right? So,
me neither.
Right. Well, there's that, right? But will isn't enough, right? We need to have this place where they can be trained. And I think more than ever, especially younger folks coming in, but older folks too, that there is this desire to do that, right? To want to learn more and create more change. And I know I sound idealistic. I know I do. But I don't think it's that crazy, because when we work together, I think we can create change, and people on both sides of the aisle win, right? And I'm going to make some very broad statements here, but the person in the BMW on their way to their corporate job and the person riding their bike to their social impact job can ride by that spot that used to have a homeless encampment and feel good. Because both sides of the aisle work together, right? And that's what it's about. I'm not making any judgment about the person in the BMW, and I'm not making any judgment on the person on the bike, but to know that people from those two camps came to create this public service academy, and now we don't have homelessness as an issue. We do have services for people who are suffering from mental illness or addiction. That to me is the ultimate goal, right? Is that these things are solved because we have people on the ground who are better able to solve them in a shorter amount of time.
I love the question that you asked, Cathey, because it's true, right? Sometimes you have these ideas and it's like, why hasn't something happened yet, right? Yeah. And so, Beach, I love the fact that you're trying to create a new fire under here and kindle things up and make things happen. I heard you say I know I'm being idealistic. And as soon as you said that, I started thinking, well, what's the opposite of being idealistic, right? I don't think it's being realistic, but I think it's being tangible. And I think it comes back to, you said before, the will quite often is there. The desire quite often is there. It's putting it into action. So I'm wondering, as we flesh this out even further, if I'm one of those people, no judgments at all, but I'm one of the people who can walk by something and say, I wish it didn't happen, but I don't want to do anything about it.
Yep.
Right? I haven't bought into the idea yet. If there was one action I could take, maybe one daily habit I could do, what would you suggest?
If you walk by an encampment and say like, oh, well, yeah, well, I can't make you care. Right. But if people wanted to do an action, I would say, go to one website and learn more about that situation, right? Go to one place and learn more about that, right? Which is an act of caring. So maybe Google, homelessness in my area, or causes of it. I'm just using that one thing because there's also food insecurity. There's so many things. In mental illness, there's so many things. I keep going back to homelessness, but educate yourself, right? And then also, I've seen people who, I've heard testimony from folks who said, for example, me and my, this is their testimony. Me and my husband were great. We're all set. My husband got sick and we ran through our insurance, blah, 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 blah. We're out of money. He's passed away and I'm homeless. People, you're not that far. You're not that far away from what you mock or what you don't look at. Right. So just educate yourself on that. I digress there a little bit, but educate yourself on the issue you see. And we can only care about one thing at a time, right? So find that thing that you care about and research that one thing, right? And you might be fascinated to hear, what's out there and what's being done and the successes that are out there, right? There are successes. And take off. I'm sorry, Cathey.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. I don't want to stop you there.
The last thing is take off your NIMBY hat, right? Not in my backyard.
Yeah.
NIMBY, NIMBY. Because some people are like, I care, but NIMBY, right? Yeah. I want a homeless shelter, but NIMBY, right? Well, guess what? It's no, I mean, we have our local communities, but we're in a global community now. Everywhere's NIMBY.
Yeah.
Right. And so
I've never heard of that before. Yeah. I've never heard that acronym before, but I love how you switched it around at the end that everywhere is NIMBY.
Everywhere's NIMBY now, right? I mean, you're in New York, Cathey's in Dallas, I'm in Portland, Oregon. There is no NIMBY anymore. Your homeless issue in New York is my homeless issue, right? It's all the same issue. And they're all our brothers and sisters. And I'm on my soapbox now. But if we can find solutions together and forget this stupid partisan aisle crap, and going across the aisle, this is our planet and our global community. And I think if we can just put all that silliness aside and say, together we can create difference. Together we can create lasting change if we care and want to spend money and resources on this. It can really make a difference.
Ooh. Beach. So much good stuff there. I had an idea when you said something, which is why I tried to talk over you for a second. Sorry about that. I got so excited. You said something and I was very excited. I'm like, I'm going to lose it. I'm going to lose it. I know I'm going to lose it. But I kept it.
Good.
I couldn't help but to think about the psychology of something. And you said something that hit me personally, because I had a debate with a friend one time who really cared about a very specific issue. And she was very upset with people when they didn't care about the same issue that she cared about. And then we had this long discussion, and I said, please don't think because people aren't doing as much as you're doing that they don't care as much as you care. I only have enough time in the day. I care that animals are being abused right now. I care, that there's homeless people in New York or in Portland or in Dallas or wherever, or in Singapore. I don't care. I care about 100 issues, but I can only put my efforts into one space. And I think what might really help this idea out, because I was already thinking that the psychology behind this is that you've got scatters of people everywhere in the corporate world. Think about it. People go into an industry, right? They work for the insurance industry, or they become, they're part of the medical industry, and they hone in on something very specific. And so when a lot of people think about community service, Beach, I think that they get overwhelmed.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
I can't fix all the problems. And so I do this, a little bit of what you said. I do this, not because I don't care, but because I feel like overwhelmed. So you said this, Beach, and I loved it, but it's like, care about one thing. Like research one thing. You even called it a care, right? You said like literally that's a caring act. Do a caring act. And I love that. So I feel like one of the things that maybe would be possible to help this idea along is to really start thinking about the psychology of how people act. And if we can get people to actually care. This has been a problem with teachers for a long time, right? Teachers are literally teaching our children. They are teaching the kids of our future. And yet we hold it at one of the lowest, points in our world as far as like salary and how much appreciation they get. We've got to do like a rebrand on community services and teachers and stuff. So I feel like we need to rebrand that space a little bit to get people excited about, because if I'm one person, you're one person, Beach, in Portland, Oregon, and then there's Mark's over there in New York, and you both like really care, but you feel like you're two people and you're really far apart. How can we gather all these people and get them behind that? Yeah, we need one good place to go and practice this.
Yeah, well, and I would say look at your local level and educate yourself on what's going on. So let's say you're listening to this, podcast, and you're like, okay, and you research something, and it's like the school board did this, or your city council did this, or your state government did this, and you're like, what's that about? Go then, next step, go talk to your representatives, right? Go to a meeting, right? Sit in on a school board meeting, right? Sit in on a city council meeting and start learning. And by the way, you could do that over Zoom. You don't have to leave your house right now. So if you're going to do it, now is the time, right? And then you can learn about how people interact, right? And how things are discussed. And you could learn about what's happening there. And then if you really wanted to take it to the next step, write them, contact them. If you're really jazzed about this idea about a public service academy, ask your congressmen, right? And senators, right? Congresspeople and senators, and ask them, what's up? Can we do this? Right? They may or may not get back to you, but if you wanted to take it to a next step, you could do that. But no matter what you're passionate about, whatever bugs you the most, whether it's animals or homelessness or mental illness or drug addiction or whatever it is, you can do research on that and get more information on that from your local municipality or your state or your county. To learn more about what's happening. And I would encourage that is before you start pointing fingers, learn. And then if you learn more and you're like, man, I want to serve on a committee or commission. You don't have to get elected for that, by the way. You can serve on a lot of committees or commissions in your local municipalities, and then get a better understanding of what's going on. And then if you wanted to, you could run for elected office, but I'm not pushing that. I'm just pushing advocacy and let people know what you want. And do it across the aisle, right? Like, right, everyone, right? Not just that one senator, but right, all of them, not just that one congressperson, but all of them. And then they know when they hear from more and more people, then they're like, ooh, we better do something about this, when they see a trend. So
Beach, you just entered into my mind this image of like every thing that's going on in our backyard, the homelessness, like everything. I almost just see this image of all of these different examples popping up on a screen, a board, whatever. And just looking at all of the problems in the world. I'm going to use Cathey's word. If you put all of the problems in the world in front of me, I get so overwhelmed.
Absolutely.
That I get in my car or I hop on my bike and I ride past it. But this idea of, and I'm just kind of seeing you talking about this, if you were to go with the idea of like just throwing everything out there and going with the truth, as Cathey said, that when people think about community service, they get overwhelmed.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But what if you zeroed in on one thing?
That's the key. One thing. Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Can you imagine a screen with all of these things and then it zeroes in? It's almost like Google Earth. Remember Google Earth?
Yes.
It like zeroes in.
Yeah, exactly.
Just zero in on that one thing that you're going to want to learn one new thing about, ask one new question about, go to one new meeting about. I love the idea of the oneness of caring.
Right. And each person who's watching this can ask themselves, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel when I pass a homeless encampment? On a scale of 1 to 10, how do I feel when I see a stray dog? Or a person who's struggling with mental illness and in the street yelling, right, at no one, right? And then whatever scores the highest, bingo, right?
Yeah.
Right? And then because I care about all of that, but there's only so much that we each have capacity for. So I serve with Big Brothers, Big Sisters, because I believe mentorship can create generational change. It's a legacy change, right? It's not just the one kid, it's that kid, it's that kid's kids, it's that kid's grandkids, right? On and on and on down the line. And so I'm a little bit, I skew this way to create a generational change. But find out what it is, and then you could serve there. Or you could at least you could serve on the board of your local social impact or social change organization. Like there's other ways to be engaged. You don't need to go to a military academy. You don't need to sign up. You don't have to run for elected office. Pick that one thing that bugs you the most. Educate yourself on that thing. And then you can, as you're educating yourself, you're going to meet people and dive in. And then going back to the Public Service Academy. Right. At West Point, I learned my first 2 years, and just in most colleges and universities, you take that first maybe 1 or 2 years where you're learning general, like English 101, right? Calculus, things like that. You learn about basic stuff, but you're also learning about other things, and you're going to choose your major, right? Imagine majoring in homelessness.
Yeah. Ooh.
Imagine majoring in mental illness support.
Ooh.
Right? And we wouldn't even call it, don't major in homelessness, major in housing.
Yeah.
Housing, right?
Major in the solution, not the problem.
Majoring in a solution, right?
Yeah.
Right. And so imagine doing that, right? You spend your first 2 years learning, and your summers, just like in the military academies, you do not go home. You go out and you serve. Imagine in the summers, you go and you serve at a social impact organization somewhere, and now you're there. Right. And so you're learning more, and you come back and you're like, man, I'm even more jazzed about the major I took, or I'm ready to choose my major based on what the service I did this summer. And then you do your final 2 years focusing on that issue, and then you pop out, graduate, and now you're serving in that sound effects are for free today. And you go serve in that area. But you're that much more educated, right? And ready to do that service instead of starting from zero.
Can I just put a pin on this moment of how fired up you got right now, Beach? This is like how excited you were. Oh my gosh. That's the thing that I think we need to bottle up and be able to sell to other people, like selling this idea. Because look at how much, if anybody who's watching this right now, you just saw Beach go from extremely composed to just like, What I can't even do that.
I can't do it either.
I'm not even sure. I don't know if I know how to do that, but like you were really fired up about this. And I'm gonna try to summarize what you just said. Let's see if I can boil it down, because you did make a great connection. So let me see if I can do this. On the individual level, the action that you can take is to do a caring action. One thing, right? To take the one thing you care about. There's this whole bunch of things. When you walk by something, like put a number on it, pick the thing that bugs you the most, and then go find something out about it, right? So that's on the individual level that you spoke about before. But then the bigger idea, and where we're tying back to your idea for creating this academy, is actually getting the support from everybody, that's saying, create a space where other people can do the other 99,000 things you can't do.
Right. That's exactly right.
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 So that's how you can tie those two together, though, I think, is like, here's your responsibility in this piece, and then support. Like, I was thinking about that. I am grateful that somebody cares about animals getting abused, and there's somebody that's actually working at a somewhere that is actually putting time and effort towards that. So be that person that will pick one thing that I care about personally, but then allow the space for everybody to come together as a concentrated unit to major, like you just said, to major in housing,
right,
not homelessness.
Yeah.
So I love that.
Yeah. And that takes a paradigm shift. That's not changing a mindset. That's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
When our schools look like our malls, that's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
When we have a public service academy, right, that is triple the size of our military academies, that's a paradigm shift.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
and that's what we need.
Yeah.
We need it.
Right. And this past year has been really tough on everyone all over the world.
Yes.
I don't think we've ever been able to say that. Right. And so we have this giant reset button that's been pressed. Right. And as this button comes back up, right, how are we going to reset? Right. Are we going to go back to what we were doing? Oh, stinks to be that person. Oh, well, right. Or are we going to say, you know what really matters is this, right? I don't need that car anymore. I don't need that big job, right? I talked to somebody the other day. He's in corporate. He's moving back home because he has 2 little kids and he wants to be near his parents. So he has grandparents. He has a whole reevaluation of everything. He was climbing the ladder and he psyched up to do it. And now he's he has a reset button. What if we all pressed reset? Right? What if we all pressed reset and said, achieving, we can still have achievement, but maybe it's not corporate achievement. Maybe it's personal achievement. Maybe it's community achievement.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Maybe it's country achievement. Maybe it's global achievement where no one is hungry. Maybe it's global achievement where no one is sleeping on a street. Can you imagine being on a planet where no matter where you go, everyone is cared for in a basic sense? It makes me emotional.
No,
because
I feel it.
No,
I feel it.
I believe that is possible.
She said global achievement, Mark, and I was like, that's the term, that's a term too that you hear it and you immediately know what it means. I mean, you might not know the specifics, but
here's what I loved even more. I love the crescendo to global achievement, because it didn't start with, it was community,
personal,
and then it was the global achievement,
and then
and then on up, right? And I read a book a long time ago. It was Eat, Pray, Love, and there was this discussion about cities have their words, right? I think New York was achievement, and LA was fame, and Rome was sex, or something like that, right? And I think as a country, I think we're achieve, right? And that's what I came up with in the 80s, achieve, money, right? What if we just paradigm shift on achievement, right? What if we, stay with achievement, but make it personal community achievement, right?
To global, yeah.
Yeah, into global achievement, right? And
it's a great thing too, because it starts encompassing a lot of things, even even our world with all these borders that we've, as human species, have created all these borders and spaces, and we've created more of our own problems than we've solved them. And so what if even down to this level of what if you were explaining this idea, Beach, and you were able to kind of start with that? Well, it starts with personal achievement, it goes to community achievement, it gets to global achievement, because ultimately what we want to do is be able to solve something here that we can at the same time solve somewhere else. And I feel very connected to somebody now in any part of the world, because I know that we have the same, we have the same goals in mind. Mark and I know that from going to Toastmasters. When we first started Toastmasters, it was one of the first organizations that I ever joined. And I was like, whoa, you can meet people from anywhere in the world. Yeah. You could barely speak a language together. But yet you would have this like really strong bond because you were taught the same principles. The same principles, and you kind of had this agreement. It was kind of a community agreement, right? And so you could literally talk to somebody in Japan, you could talk to somebody in Colombia, you could talk to somebody in South Africa, and you would all kind of feel the same. And I think, Beach, that's what you're trying to head at with this, right? Is this level?
That level of connectivity, and I think it helps itself along, right? If you think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the bottom rung is food and shelter and security, right? If we do more and more of that work, that kind of global community work, right? And more people are supported and feel secure, well, then they're not worried about their next meal. They're worried about, how can I help? Right? And so more and more people are then able to serve in this capacity, right? And instead of a teenager saying like, I want to get my Lamborghini, or whatever they're saying now. I don't even know how they talk, right? Or I want to be on TikTok. Imagine somebody, instead of posting a TikTok dance, they post where they served that day.
Ooh, yeah,
right? And this is a paradigm shift, right? Imagine that being the coolest thing, right?
Hashtag global achievement, right? Like
hashtag global achievement, right? This is where I serve today. And believe me, I've been on service projects where a young person comes up and they're like, I served, can you sign my form so I can get credit at high school?
Yeah.
I've been there.
Right? And you know what? Okay, right? I've been a teenager. I was a weirdo. I did a lot of community service, but I get that. But imagine if they're like, oh, I get to serve here today, right? And then they do a TikTok or a Snapchat or whatever is, the zeitgeist social media at the time, right? And that is the paradigm shift, right? Of, hey, where did you serve today?
Yeah.
Right? Where did you serve this weekend? Right? Instead of the mayor of Miami having to shut down a city because of spring breakers.
Yeah.
Imagine all of those spring breakers across the country doing service days instead of getting lit.
Yeah.
Can I just say, I love the question. There's so many things that I wrote down. And Cathey and I always tell people, like, anytime you see it, like heads down, like we're writing, right?
Yeah. That's cool.
I love the question. And I would really encourage you to make sure you have it down in your notes and you use it. Where did you serve today?
Yeah.
That's a powerful question. That's such a reflective question to get the conversation going. I think that question is so incredibly powerful. Whether it comes at the beginning, the middle, or the end, or all three, I think that's a powerful question that you got to make sure that you keep in there. The other thing that I wanted to share, and Cathey raised this before, Beach, when you get excited, when you get passionate, tell me, Cathey, if you noticed this, that's when all of these like concepts, ideas.
Yeah, she's just spurting them out.
it just naturally starts to come out once you start to get fired up about it. And what I love about what you're saying is, if we could just get fired up, right? Because I think about my days in teaching, and you're right. The kid who did the community service hours did it for the credit or for the college admissions.
Sure.
But how much did they do it because they really cared?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But and then imagine if there was a shift in that, like saying, oh man, I got to serve here today.
Yeah, the
right.
Paradigm shift.
I took my kids once to in Portland this years ago, and we were serving food to folks that were food insecure. And so my kids were in the line serving food, and they were quiet, and they were talking to folks, and folks were talking to them, and they were a little bit scared, but they did their shift. And then I said, all right, let's go get lunch. And they were still really quiet. And we sat down at lunch, and the food comes in, and I said, hey, so what did you two think of today? And my daughter says, I'm really grateful for this lunch, Mom. And my son was sitting next to her, and he just was like, he couldn't speak. And that wasn't for credit. Nobody signed a form. They just did that. I mean, of course, I brought them, right? But when you do that kind of service, even if you don't want to be there, you're still learning, right? And if we can help along this paradigm shift of making service the thing versus, partying, I think that could it could create a sea change. And not just in a community, in our country, but in our planet, and and I haven't even mentioned like the environment and climate change, right? There's plenty of work to be done there, right? Plenty of work to be done there. And we heard the call in the 70s, right? When scientists were in front of Congress talking about that. Imagine if our achievement mindset around that, around global achievement was there. We would not be talking about these terrible weather events that are hitting us globally now. We're all together now. COVID, weather, whatever, we're together. And so we can solve this together or not. And so you guys got me fired up so much right now. It's not even funny.
You're amazing. I'm gonna put out a challenge to everybody in the world right now via my inspiration through Beach. It's like, first of all, I'm gonna throw it out there. I challenge somebody to start this academy. I challenge somebody to start the Public Service Academy. So on that level, I challenge you. If you're listening to this and you have the means or the opportunity, or you have the same fire that Beach has, and you think you can do it, please do. On the
I'd love to work with you on it.
Yes, and call Beach.
Call me.
And on the individual level, I would say you drop so many nuggets, and Beach, this is an idea that will continue to grow and cultivate, but here's what I would say, what I'm leaving with today is I felt this personal individual call to get to my personal achievement, to community achievement, to ultimately global achievement. So getting to the space of asking myself every day, how did I serve? And being proud of it, like changing the shift, helping being part of the narrative that makes it normalized to want to serve. So it's like, so I challenge everybody else individually, to be brave enough to step up and be part of that group that will be willing to do that. Because you can make more of just a mindset shift. You can make that paradigm. You can help make that you can fire up and fuel the paradigm shift.
Right.
Absolutely powerful. Absolutely powerful. I hope that by the time that the sun sets on whatever day it is that anybody is watching this, that when they think about the question, where did I serve today? That they have an answer to that question. And that they ask themselves that question every single day. Beach, I have a question for you.
Go.
We started off with an idea about a service academy.
Yeah, we did.
For social change, right? An academy that's larger than every other academy on the face of the planet. And as we started to come towards, I like to say, the stopping point, not the end, right? The stopping point of this conversation, one of the last things I heard you say was make service the thing.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Now, that's how it evolved in my mind. But what we always like to ask is, since we started this conversation, how has your idea evolved in your mind?
Well, I would like a day to be 48 hours so I could work on this more. But as we've talked, it's actually become more tangible to me, right? There are military academies all over the world, and there are, there's military academy exchanges and all that. To have a service academy and to do service academy exchanges, like what are they doing in France? What are they doing in China, right? Like imagine those exchanges. Like, so I feel I've thought about it in a broader sense. To answer your question, Mark, number one, it's more tangible. Like I actually think this could happen. I hope that it could happen. And number two, I think we can't even conceive of the good things that can come out of this, right? I think it's beyond our conception, right? When I was 5, I remember, or 6 or whatever, I remember thinking, gosh, I wish I could have a phone that wasn't just on the wall. I wish I could have a phone that I could bring around with me. Right. And last March, I think all of us were like, oh my gosh, I hope we can get a vaccine, but it takes 5 to 10 years to get a vaccine. We have one. Thanks to some innovative, amazing people. And we have more than one, right? And so necessity is the mother of invention, right? We have a necessity for our planet, for our community, for us individually. I think we can all be richer if service becomes our center. Achievement and service becomes our center. And I think we could do it. If we could shed this other stuff about partisanness and liberal and conservative, all that crazy stuff. It's about, and I want to say siblings. We're all siblings. I purposefully don't say brother and sister. I want to be more inclusive. We're all siblings, all of us. What would you do for your sibling? Right?
Oh man, Cathey, I think if we continued to have a conversation with Beach would continue to keep dropping these questions and these statements. Just the whole part about siblings just blew my mind right there. Just absolutely blew my mind. Here's what I'm so super happy to hear. That you started off, Beach, saying, I feel idealistic. And you just said, I think it's tangible.
I think it can be done.
That's well, that's incredible. Beach, Cathey challenged everybody, if they want to help you out with this idea, to reach out to you. How can they reach out to you if they want to learn more, do more, help more, serve more?
Yeah. Well, it's scary to do it, but here we go. Here's my email, beach.pace@yahoo.com. Send me an email if you want to talk and how we could do this. Like if people in all of the 50 states were writing their legislature saying Public Service Academy, right? If we started that conversation, and it will take a long time to get it voted upon and then appropriations for it. But we have to start somewhere, right? The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. And in this particular case, it's a single phone call or an email, right? To say, I'm in, right? I'm in. So feel free to send me an email and let's have the conversation.
Beautiful. Send that email to Beach. One step, global achievement. And if you'd like to be just like Beach, have an opportunity to have a conversation with Cathey and I so that you could take the idea that's firing up in your brain, so you could take it from idealistic to tangible, so you can reach more people. send an email to Marc and Cathey at gmail.com. And we would love to have you on. It's about to go down.